Okay, hi everybody. We're going to get started here. Thanks for joining us. Okay, thanks for joining us. Hello everyone. My name is Brad Dunn. I'm the editor of Remind, a media and events platform that's focused on advancing the business of psychedelics. And today we're going to be discussing what the current landscape looks like in Oregon and Colorado, and the opportunities and challenges of running a business in the two states where psychedelics have been legalized. This will be a panel discussion with three industry experts who I'll introduce in a moment. We'll have a conversation for about 20 minutes, and then we'll open it up the rest of the time for audience questions. Total webinar length is going to be about 45 minutes. If you have a question at any point, feel free to enter it in the field at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible. But before we begin, for all of you who like to save dates, here are two that I think are great to save. November 28th and 29th this year. That's when we'll be holding our second annual Remind Psychedelics Business Forum in Las Vegas. We're still co-located with MJ BizCon. We're expanding to 2 days this year. We'll have an incredible lineup of speakers and fantastic opportunities not only to network, but also to get some brand exposure through new sponsorship offerings. So save the dates, November 28th and 29th. And one last thing, we've just released a new 28-page special report that's focused on the very topics we'll be discussing today, the business opportunities in these new state-regulated markets. It's written by Josh Hardman, founder of Psychedelic Alpha, and one of our strategic advisors at Remind. The report is free, and we'll be emailing a link where you can download it to everybody who's in the audience today. So look for that email and check it out. All right, let's get started. I'm going to stop my screen share. We're going to introduce our panelists. So Daniel, we can go over to the full panel view. All right, here we go. We have an amazing trio of experts here. Let's start with Sean McAllister. Sean is an attorney at McAllister Law Office in Denver. He specializes in the intersection of regulatory and corporate law. He's been a leader in the emerging industries of cannabis, hemp, and psychedelic medicine. We also have Sheva Pekar. Sheva is the founder of the consultancy firm PsyCann Advisors. She's a longtime policy reform advocate in cannabis and psychedelics and was one of the driving forces behind Denver's decriminalization of psilocybin in 2019. And we have Perry Salzhauer. Perry's an attorney and co-founder of the Greenlight Law Group, a firm that works with clients in the emerging legal psychedelics field to help them navigate the evolving ecosystem in Oregon. So Sean, Sheva, Perry, thanks for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Let's just dig right in. I think we're going to start with one set question that you'll each answer. Sheva, I think we're going to start with you. And that question is, if you had to say right now, what's the one thing that every entrepreneur or investor looking to get into these newly open psychedelic state-regulated markets, what's the one thing they should know about the current landscape? Oh, and I think you're on mute. No worries.
Thanks, Brad, for inviting me. The one thing that I think people should know is that this is, while there will be a few smaller, large opportunities, pharma opportunities, mostly this will be an industry for smaller entrepreneurs. You know, I like to say this is a for healing model, not a for-profit model. This is an industry of people who want to create opportunities for themselves and their community. And, you know, we really want to create a landscape for people to serve in all the ways that they know how. You know, there's ways that you could blend psychedelic services with either palliative care or hospice care or addiction treatment care. And the goal for this new industry is to give people the opportunity to serve their local community.
That's great. Sean, how would you field that question? What's the one thing any entrepreneur or investor needs to know right now?
Yeah, well, thanks, Brad and Sarah and everybody at Remind for putting this together. And thanks for the participants and audience for coming. Geez, I mean, there's, as I said yesterday, I think there's 30 things entrepreneurs need to know. But, you know, a couple of the big ones would certainly be, this is going to be a service industry, not a retail products industry. You know, if you want to get into this industry, you are going to be looking at helping heal people. That's a very different mission than putting up a dispensary and selling ounces of cannabis. Each of these states is going to require a preparation, an administration, and an integration session. So we're not simply selling a product to people, you're actually selling a service And frankly, most of the profit is likely to come from the service side. The product, in this case, mushrooms, don't even need a source of light. They just need heat and water to grow and other nutrients. But the bottom line is, we don't have a big cost of the product. Most of the cost in this system is going to come from the service side. And so you're going to need to marry, therapists with producers, with people that understand the spiritual and healing powers of these psychedelics. And so these are very different skill sets than just opening up a dispensary and growing cannabis. So that's a big thing. And I know you said the one thing, but 1A would be the states are wholly unprepared for this work. And so they weren't very prepared for cannabis, by the way, but they seem particularly unprepared and unfamiliar with psychedelics. And, this is just evidence of how fast our movement has grown and how quickly that it really has outpaced the capacity and the expertise of these state regulators. So we have a lot of work to do there. And that creates a lot of uncertainty for the coming years.
Uncertainty. Yeah, that's kind of probably a big theme of this. Perry, what about you? How would you field that question? What's the one thing that they should know?
Thanks, Brad. Again, thanks for having me. Great to be here with Sheva and Sean and you and the folks in the audience. I'm going to follow on what Sean said, right? Because, my background is pretty deep in the corporate analytics and transactional law. And, not only is it important to understand that it stems from the fact that this is not cannabis. And there's a difference between a product and a service. And for entrepreneurs, I hope I'm not saying something you don't already know. There's entirely different metrics that you use to analyze product-based business, service-based business, to analyze profitability, drive revenue. You have different ways to market these products, different ways to sell these products. And it gets even more complicated because, in both Oregon and Colorado, we're going to see these two distinct constituencies. We have this medical therapeutic use that Sean and Sheva were touching on, in that you're going to integrate psilocybin into other modalities, and it's going to be a therapy-based model. But then we also have what may be the most profitable opportunity would be the sort of retreat, psychedelic retreat use in these, hopefully, successful and some lavish, some less lavish, but in these beautiful idyllic settings where you can go and you can engage in these therapeutic sessions. But those are very distinct constituencies of potential customers, clients, right? And it gets even more complicated because we can segregate medical therapeutic use into this pharma vertical and then this regulated vertical. So it's going to be going to be much more complicated, right? To design a business plan that's going to be successful and to continue to monitor it. And than it was in cannabis, where I think the one thing I think we can take, what entrepreneurs can take away from the experience of cannabis, is that that it's very important to understand these different verticals and these different constituencies, so that entrepreneurs don't make the same mistakes they made with a misunderstanding of the cannabis consumer. So I guess the most important thing to know is to really understand the drivers in a service-based market and the different types of clients you might see, so that when you put together your team, you look at the opportunity in a very thoughtful way, with an understanding, like Sheva said, that it's more likely that there's going to be a lot of small wins than a few, home runs.
Gotcha. That's great. Well, let's open up whoever wants to answer this. And Perry, your firm is focused largely in Oregon. Colorado's so early days. What lessons have we learned about some of the businesses applying for licenses in Oregon? We're several months in now. What are some of the top things we've learned about the rollout there from the business owner perspective?
Again, I'm going to follow on what Sean and Sheva said, which is the regulators don't necessarily understand, right? What we learned, to be honest, is that in Oregon, the other, and again, psilocybin in Oregon cannot be considered the practice of medicine, but it is housed within the Oregon Health Authority, which also houses all the boards that regulate medical doctors, naturopathic doctors, acupuncturists, massage therapists. Those other boards are only now starting to realize that there's an interplay between what they regulate and what the psilocybin board regulates. And I wouldn't necessarily say that it's a lack of understanding, but there was a lack of engagement. And this lack of engagement at a high level, agency level, has led to a lot of sort of trepidation and concern from people who might otherwise get into the industry but are regulated by these other boards. On a local micro level, we're also seeing, very similar to cannabis, like Sean said, we're seeing local jurisdictions only now begin to understand and address some of these siting issues. And what we've learned, similarly to cannabis, is that local control siting issues is a huge factor in whether or not you will be able to execute your business plan in the way and in the place where you want, particularly if you're moving in the retreat model, right? So what we've learned is that there's still a lot of uncertainties. There's a lot of fear. There's a lack of engagement and understanding from other boards. And even in jurisdictions that have opted in, they're still not sure yet where they want these to be and how they might fit them into the zoning puzzle.
Got it. Sheva, how about you? You've worked with clients in Oregon. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I was happy to speak next. One of the things that is really important to know is it's really important to structure your team really well, have really strong professionals in your corner who understand the medicine itself. There's a lot of business professionals who have experience in other industries and other worlds, but it's really crucial to have a handle on what this medicine product experience is. And so building a really strong team is an extraordinary important step. Also, I know Perry touched on it a little, but don't put the cart before the horse. Municipalities are opting out everywhere. And, in Colorado, we don't have that rule, but that can change. Don't spend all your money in one place, and recognize that this is still a very young world, and regulators don't know what they don't know. And so they're learning this industry as well. And so there's kind of an almost collaborative learning, the regulators are building the rules, but the business owners and the people who understand this medicine are also educating regulators on what this is and how it's different than cannabis. A lot of people talk about the similarities, but I think that in reality, it's actually more different than it is similar. Probably the biggest similarity is federal, 280E taxes, Perry likes to talk about. And, there's a lot of, association between them, but they are very different industries. And we really have to go slow, go patiently, know your team, understand your vision, and recognize that there will be a lot of failure. There's a lot of people who want in and who don't understand. And so take your time, go slow, find the right partnerships, get a really clear business plan in place, and really wait and see what is happening and then jump a little bit.
What is happening is a good segue to a next section. I do want to remind the audience to feel free to post some questions. We're going to give a lot of time to questions, so be as specific as you want, and we will field it. If you don't see it, it's at the bottom of your screen in the question field. But Sean, I know we talked before the call about the changing landscape in Colorado, and you have learned about some new bills that may be coming down the line. Can you share what you've heard?
Sure. Yeah, that's why this is the hottest webinar in America, because you're getting less than 12 hours old news here that Prop 122 in Colorado was a statutory change, meaning it's not in our Constitution, it's in our statutes, and the legislature is allowed to tinker with the initiative. I mean, they could technically repeal it if they want to. And in fact, they already have introduced a bill. I think it was released yesterday. It'll be introduced today. There'll be the first hearing on this bill on Thursday. And this has major implications for the psychedelic industry here in Colorado. And that includes that many doctors and therapists that I'm working with and myself, we believe there's a pathway right now to do psychedelic assisted therapy in Colorado under the decriminalization provisions. We have to wait 2 years for a regulated model, but there's a pathway right now if you follow the language of the current law. There's also a pathway for retreat centers and traditional healers and medicine people to do work in the decriminalized zone of Colorado's law. And the legislature has seen that, and they've immediately reacted. And this draft bill includes some provisions that make clear that a licensed professional cannot do the work in this area until we have a licensure under state law. It makes clear that there cannot be payment for even harm reduction services for a traditional healer or spiritual counseling. There can't be any payment around the giving away of natural medicine, which is now legal in Colorado. And so that, if that passes without amendments, we haven't even talked about this whole opportunity for retreat centers and healers and the informal economy that would potentially be available in Colorado. But this will make it much more challenging and create a lot more complexity for those kind of practitioners who don't want to wait 2 years. So that's a huge development. And, I would encourage people to look at this new draft bill. It's being introduced by State Senator Steve Finberg, the Senate President of the Colorado legislature. And so maybe reach out to his office, ask how you can get involved, follow the process. It really is more than just that decrim side. There's things on the regulated side in that bill that make clear you can only have 2 categories of licensure. So we're going to have manufacturing licenses, testing licenses, healing center licenses, delivery licenses. And this new draft bill, for the first time, limits the categories you can have licensure in. And what that means is vertical integration is not going to be a thing in Colorado. You might be able to have a cultivation and a healing center, but you can't have, testing or delivery or, some of the other categories. So it's going to affect people's business models. So kind of like Shev said, it's a little premature to jump in and cut deals and write contracts when the laws are still changing, but you need to follow these changes in law. And I'll let other people have a chance here, but I just think this is a perfect example of the movement is ahead of the society. The movement is ahead of the legislatures. So the majority of Coloradans in Oregon believe that psilocybin should be legal, but the details are hotly contested. And, the instinct of the legislator is to be conservative and go slow and be overprotective at the beginning of the process. So we have this tension here, and I think the movement has a lot more work to do. Maybe the easiest thing we did was pass these initiatives, and now the hard thing is actually making them work.
Perry, I saw you were going to jump in on that. As far as businesses setting up, what can they do now then with all this uncertainty? What's the smartest next steps? And anybody can answer this. But given this amount of, if the legislatures take this much time, what can someone do now to plant the right seeds that make the most sense given all these different winds blowing?
Well, we have a little bit more certainty in rules are in place. And yes, the legislature can next session. They're not going to do anything to the rules. There won't be any legislation addressing this year, except for this hot button item, which is this data collection bill that I think might be dead by now. So there is more certainty in Oregon, but what we can expect in that certainty still is a lot of confusion. So it's similar to Colorado in that the drafting of rules is very different from the implementation of rules. And there's always going to be some gray areas, the interstitial spaces between how the mechanics actually work. And we're going to see a lot of the same sorts of things. We're already seeing a lot of the same sorts of things that we saw in cannabis in terms of how you raise capital, how you enter into arrangements that are mutually beneficial with other manufacturers, with other service centers. We're seeing a lot of deal making. And while there is at least some black letter law to help guide what it's going to look like, there still is, when I look at a lot of these deals that come to me, there's still a lot of confusion about what is and what is not going to be permitted. So I think, again, what we can expect in the next 12 months, confusion. And again, missteps. I think in year 2, we'll see a lot of that gray area fade away. Hopefully the legislature will make some tweaks to make it more, conducive to commerce, I suppose. Or maybe they go the other way. Maybe they make changes to make it more conducive to this integrative therapy model. That's not necessarily designed to make a lot of money. It's more designed to deliver these services to the populations that are most in need.
Okay, great. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to post them. We're going to start kind of going through some of these. How do you think the gray market for psilocybin will impact the legal/licensed markets as they come online? I mean, we see this in cannabis in places where, like New York, where there's a strong cannabis gray market that has, a lot of competition against the onboarding legal side. What do we think about the... Okay, go ahead.
You mind if I jump in on that? I know I just spoke, but I'll just take the story. The story of the Mushroom House in Portland, which was its meteoric rise and quick fall when the police came in. Almost immediately after the measure was passed, some folks opened up a store in downtown Portland called the Mushroom House, and they just started selling mushrooms the way they sell cannabis in bodegas in New York City. It lasted some measure of weeks before it got shut down, but they had lines out the door. So the gray market, fortunately for mushroom psilocybin entrepreneurs and purveyors of and supporters of natural medicine, is the gray market is much smaller. So I believe it will have less of an impact. But it already has had some significant impact in Oregon.
Sean, Sheva, do you guys have a viewpoint?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in. I was going to say that I think that with the education that's, coming online, talks like these and others are really going to invite people to get more educated. And that's, on the big scale, people, they want to understand this, for those of us who know, like they say, for those of us who know, no explanation is needed. And for those of us who don't know, no explanation is possible. And so I think that gray market is, like Perry said, going to be pretty small. People are curious. They want to know. They want to treat their existing ailments with other modalities than opiates, and they are interested. And so I think that with different kinds of centers, different kinds of opportunities, people are really want to get that help. And I think that more often people will feel safer, more comfortable sharing this experience or learning about the experience from people who know. And so I think that it's really, these service centers, healing centers are going to thrive with all their diversity and variability and different modalities that people are going to integrate with the consumption of mushrooms. And so I think that that's going to be a really big opportunity. And the more we educate people, the more they're going to want to pursue the legal route, because they know that, not that you can go wrong, but, to do this experience with a healer will guide your intention a lot further.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say I agree with Shev that there's probably an overestimation of the risk from the gray market. I did ask one of my clients in Oregon recently, are there a lot of things happening there? A lot of, you buy a sticker, you get free mushrooms, and maybe there is some of that. I know that's happening in DC. But the perception I have from Oregon is not really. People are not, like you said, the Shroom House already got raided and shut down. If this legislative amendment in Colorado passes, it would heavily curtail, gray market activity in Colorado. And really, like Shev said, there's not like a cartel behind mushrooms. There's no mushroom cartel. I think the sort of street price for microdoses is like $1.50 to $3 a microdose. I mean, we're talking about very small numbers here. Even if you bought 50 of those, that still would be a very small number. And so I think there will be some gray market erosion of the regulated market, but we get in these bubbles, and the people that are in this movement or know people that use psychedelics thinks that, like Shev said, everybody understands. But I think the vast majority of people are looking for a regulated, access point where somebody's got some kind of certification that they know what they're doing with this medicine. So it'll be an issue. It certainly will be much less important in Colorado if this legislative bill passes. I'm not a fan of this bill. I'd like there to be a robust gray market with people doing healing work, but this is where we are.
That's great. Well, and on that topic, just on the estimation of the impact of the gray market, what about just the market, the size of the potential market in general in these states? Have you seen any compelling or interesting research about how big the market's going to be, or do you think new businesses are overestimating the demand that will be out there, or did the Michael Pollan book create a bunch of new demand, and is this really having a moment? What's your feel about the actual marketplace size?
I'll jump in. I'm excited to see the service and healing centers. I'm really excited to see what people come up with. I mean, there's a million people and a million ideas. And I think that Michael Pollan's book, I mean, I've had dozens of people ask me if I've read it, and I think that let's be real. I think that a lot of people who are expecting to make a whole lot of money are going to get pushed aside. And for the people that want to divert their career path, they want to bring wealth to their family, they want to have a day-to-day life that inspires them in the realm of healing psychedelics, that'll be huge. And I'm really excited to see that happen. Cultivation, obviously, and manufacturing are going to be really small. Facilitators and actual healers getting certified, I think, will be tremendous. So, again, it'll look different than cannabis. I don't know, I can't tell you numbers or anything like that, but I feel like with all these diverse ideas, I think there will be a lot of new businesses. And then over time, the market will define who succeeds based on originality, patient care, attention. I know Sean mentioned the, preparation, consumption, and integration. Which companies do those three facets the best? Those are the companies that are going to succeed. And I think that it'll be very fascinating to see. And I'm really excited to see a lot of local companies, a lot of grassroots, a lot of people who want to heal their neighborhood and want to heal their local community. And those are the people that I think are going to thrive.
I think the market can go one of two ways. On the one hand, the Michael Pollan book aside, I think cannabis entrepreneurs early on at least in the analyst market, there was a major overestimation of the amount of consumers that would come out of the woodwork to try cannabis after the new market entrant segment was a lot smaller. I think that will hold in psilocybin as well. But following on this therapeutic model, right, I think there's a big possibility that it is actually greater than that. Because when you think about the intentionality and the goal of these programs, which is to use psilocybin as a natural medicine to help cure existing ailments, whether it be PTSD, whether it's other types of trauma, in a new modality, I think potentially the market could be huge. The market could be coextensive with the entire therapeutic market in each individual state and ultimately the entire US. Because as we do this work, as Sean and Sheva do the work in Colorado, and as the regulatory folks do the work in Oregon, and we move society towards a more normalized conception of these substances as natural medicines, they become medicines conceptually like anything else. And so anyone who may go to see a therapist or a social worker for their anxiety issues, for their trauma issues, may very likely be a client customer of a service center. So depending on how the regulatory models shape up, it could be huge or it could be relatively small.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Thanks, Perry. One thing I want us all to remember is that Colorado is not just psilocybin. Thank you, Oregon, for leading the way, but we have 3 other psychedelic compounds, and that includes mescaline other than peyote. It includes DMT, the active ingredient in ayahuasca, and also sourced from other natural sources, and then ibogaine or iboga. And what's interesting about this bill I just mentioned is that the way it works in Colorado is psilocybin will get regulated first in 2024, and then the other 3 in the initiative were the earliest starting date was 2026. But the legislature, and if I read this bill right, it took away that 2026 barrier for ibogaine and left it in place for DMT and mescaline. But the point here I'm making is ibogaine is a real deal, potential fix for hardcore drug addiction, alcoholism. And if this passes, or even if it doesn't, we have to wait till 2026. Colorado is going to be the only state with legal ibogaine in the country. And we have an opiate epidemic. We have, very bad alcoholism like everywhere else in the world. But if this is the only place you can come for ibogaine in America, there's a great opportunity. There's a place you're going to need to get your team together, like Shev says. So yeah, I think there are some really unique opportunities in spite of all the challenges. And then to Perry's point, this bigger question of the market, if you just look at the numbers, half of Americans have smoked cannabis, 20% use it regularly. The numbers for psychedelics are 1/10 or 1/20th those numbers. So 5 to 10% say they've used psychedelics in a lifetime, 1 to 2% use them regularly. If you believe those numbers and even give some growth room, in Colorado, we have a $2 billion cannabis industry. Does that mean you get a $200 million psilocybin industry, maybe a $400 million when all these psychedelics come online? That's a lot of money, and that's a decent sized industry, but it's not $2 billion like cannabis unless there is some kind of, luxury experience where you pay $10,000 a retreat. But I like to put that in context that I think there will be a handful of highly successful players, and that's going to be, people that know how to merge the cultivation, the preparation, the administration, and the integration, do all those things really well. I do see a lot of entrepreneurs that seem to want to do everything. They want to do the healing centers. They want to do a training organization where they train facilitators. I think there's some examples out there where if you try to do too much, there's a lot of people trying to do training. Okay. Are you ready to compete with Naropa and CIIS and all the other companies out there that are getting into the training space? So maybe you just should do training by itself and become the best at that, because to do all those things is going to be a really challenging, set of skills, and you're going to need a big team.
Well, that's a good segue.
Go around that. Just look at the numbers with our public in Oregon. We are 3.5 months into the application window. There have been 302 total applications submitted to the psilocybin board. 232 of those are worker permits. So effectively, you've got about 70 business applications in. At this time in 2016 in cannabis, there were 25 times that total number. So if you take that 70, we're looking at, it's dwarfed by the amount of applications that the OLCC fielded for cannabis applications. So that tells us a little something about the difference in the size of the market.
Got it. All right, we're less than 10 minutes. I wanted to just address a few more of these questions here. There's a lot of questions in here about synthesis. And you just mentioned maybe focusing only on training groups, Sean. But the questions are, all about, do you have a viewpoint or opinion on what happened with the synthesis failure? And specifically, will that failure make the business landscape that much harder in Oregon, or for other entrepreneurs either raising money or just working within the framework of Oregon? You want to field that one?
I think Perry should try that. I have to confess, synthesis is a client of mine, or has been over the years, and I probably shouldn't make any comment about that.
Yeah, and I have clients that are somewhat involved with them. But the long story short is, I don't think it's going to impact it too much. I think what we've been saying today is instructive as to what happened there, which is you need to take your time. You need to take a step back. We'll maybe watch the pitch come into the plate before you take a swing. Don't move so fast. Make sure you really understand the landscape. I'm sure it's going to have a chilling effect on the sort of private institutional dollars that synthesis raised. So I have no visibility into where their money came from. So full disclosure. There's certainly going to be a chilling effect somewhat, right? Because it stands as a cautionary tale. But like most cautionary tales in emerging markets, there's a lesson to be learned from it. And I think most people will take that lesson, integrate it into their entrepreneur's business model, and still be successful. So yeah, I think it's going to chill a little bit, but no, not in any meaningful way, and certainly not in the long term.
All right, why don't we end on? Or Sheva, did you want to go in
no,
on that?
I was just going to say, that question is, that just speaks to slowing down. Not putting the cart before the horse. Wait for rules. Municipality control is not a new idea. So we've seen that in cannabis a ton. So just slow down. Just be patient. Know your team. Know your process. Build everything before you jump. But go ahead, Brad. I know there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, I want to get to this one because there's a bunch of questions along this line that we haven't addressed directly, and that's, do you think not having federal protection for psilocybin business like cannabis had with the Cole memo is impacting all of this right now?
Yes, of course. This is our central dysfunction in America. It's like we have so many layers of one law on the books, but another reality. In California, people sell psilocybin over the counter at unlicensed dispensaries and nobody gets in trouble. In Colorado, we're going to have this gray market. Even if we have a regulated system, it's going to be illegal at the federal level. And we're 25 years into cannabis legalization, and we still can't even get a banking bill out of Congress. How long is it going to take till we can get it? I don't want to be pessimistic about it. I'd love for us to take back control of our government and get common sense things done and say if the state says it's legal at the federal level. But boy, I think entrepreneurs are going to have to live with this federal uncertainty. By the way, there is no Cole memo for cannabis anymore. That was rescinded. So cannabis has appropriations riders for medical cannabis, but there's no actual protection for recreational cannabis anywhere. And we have a multi-billion-dollar industry across the nation. So I think, entrepreneurs will find a way, and the IRS is still going to take your money, even if it's federally illegal. But it is a problem. It'll be a problem in banking and insurance for landlords. There's all sorts of ways it'll continue to be a problem.
I just want to jump in and kind of the one message I've been sharing since the very beginning is education. It's like the more we educate others, not just entrepreneurs as are on this panel, but regulators and showing up and speaking up and advocating for the mushrooms and advocating for community healing and advocating for alternative modalities to opiate addiction treatments and really stepping in to the motive of not so much trying to make the money in this industry, because I think we've all said that that's just not really what this industry is about, but really to community healing. I mean, we have a pandemic of PTSD riddled in our society, and it's deep. And this is not the answer; it is an answer. And I think the best thing we can do is just continue to push with education and show up and bring more knowledge to the table, so that people have more access to the idea that there are other ways, and that this is one solution that we can use to help support our growth as a civilization, if you want, the gen.
I love that. I love that. All right, let's end on another question here is, what other state legislative moves are you keeping an eye on? What's most interesting? There's obviously a lot of research bills in various states. Some states are further along. Some have had setbacks. Of all the other states you guys are looking at, what are the notable ones in your minds that people should be keeping an eye on?
I understand that Washington's prop may include a microdose component that would, while not being a true retail market, might be moving in that direction. What the final, it's not going to be on the ballot, as I understand it, until 2024. And the folks working on it are still sort of working it out. But I think that would be exciting to see what a sort of quasi-retail microdose market looks like, how that would work. I think as an entrepreneur, it can help you integrate some of the analytics I talked about earlier, about the difference between services and retail, and find a way to bridge those. That's exciting.
Great.
I'm excited about New Jersey has a bill. New York is, there's a lot of people talking. I know those two states are kind of a little bit on the back end with cannabis, and it's exciting to me that the Northeast, where I come from, is moving forward and talking about psychedelics in those two states. There isn't a lot of media conversation about it, but there are definitely a lot of people in the background, including some on this panel here, guests here, that are in that space and making waves in the Northeast.
I'll jump in real quick. I know we're out of time. California obviously has a bill in the legislature. It may or may not pass. If it doesn't, then maybe we'll go to the voters in 2024. If funders will find $15 or $20 million. So California, obviously the biggest opportunity. Also religious freedom, just a quick plug. I mean, I'm lead or co-counsel in 2 cases suing the DEA for ayahuasca churches, trying to get formal recognition for ayahuasca churches. I think we're going to see a break in this monopoly that the 2 current legal ayahuasca churches have. We're going to start seeing new churches get recognized. Again, this isn't so much an investment opportunity. Maybe there's some services you can provide to those churches and profit, but it's a way in which these medicines are going to start spreading very quickly in the coming years, and keep an eye on that.
Fantastic. Well, we have hit time, unfortunately. There's a lot of great questions here. We will definitely be posting this recording on site. We'll email everybody with links to that. But just want to remind everybody, save the date, November 28, 29 for our annual conference. And follow us on social. Sign up for our newsletter. Our handle is Remind Social. And I just want to thank Sheva, Sean, and Perry for joining us today. It's our first webinar. A lot of fun. You guys gave a lot of great information, and I wish you all the best. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Take care.